and I hope everybody can stick with us through this entire webinar. We are going to be recording this and it will be posted afterwards to our website. So you can always come back if you're not able to stay for the whole time. So we're going to get started. Hello, I am Ryan Wilson, Manager of Water Resources and the project lead for StormStore at the Metropolitan Planning Council. For those who are less familiar with MPC, we are an independent nonprofit organization that works to advance the sustainability, equity, and prosperity of the greater Chicago region. On behalf of my colleagues, we're thrilled to have you all joining us here today. To make sure we can all engage easily, I want to briefly go over a few housekeeping items. You can see them here on the screen, but first, we have enabled both the chat and the Q&A functions here on Zoom. You can find each in the bottom portion of your screen. We ask you to use the chat box throughout the session to share your thoughts with us directly, the panelists, those working on the back end, or to get my intention about something. We also encourage you to use the Q&A function to post questions about the program, about participation, so that we can easily access them. Over the course of this webinar, my colleagues will be working in the background to answer those live, and questions that aren't answered will be saved for later in the webinar. Second, this event features live closed captioning in English, so please click the closed captions here in Zoom to turn on or off the English caption. And finally, this event is being recorded. We will share a link to the recording and any relevant resources provided by our team or by our presenters here in a follow-up email to all attendees. So keep an eye out for that. So in our time together today, we're going to try to do three different things. First, we're going to take a tour of the key features from our updated website, stormstore.org, including things like how to determine if your project is eligible and identify if and where there are credits available, where to access frequently asked questions through stormstore.org, and how to connect with our team if you need any additional support. Next, we're going to hear from two leading practitioners about their experience planning for and implementing StormStore type projects. And finally, we'll open the floor to your questions not already answered in the chat or those that bear repeating for the audience listening in. We hope that you leave today's webinar excited about StormStore and take one or more of the following actions. First, visit the website, take a look around and share stormstore.org within your firm or boost your social network. This is how we make connections for this program, and we need your help to make sure that everyone knows about this program who may benefit. Second, reach out to our team. You might want to discuss a project or connect on available credits, or you may need support on a trade, which is something we would be more than excited to help you with. And it bears repeating throughout our time today, we are here to help you, both my colleagues at MPC as well as our colleagues at the Nature Conservancy. Our support is provided free of charge through the generous support of our funders. Thank you, funders. Now, please join me in welcoming my StormStore colleagues working behind and in front of the camera, Jen Jenkins from the Nature Conservancy and Hugo Coronado from the Metropolitan Planning Council. Jen will be fielding questions you have in the chat as we go along, and will join us on screen for the Q&A section to end. So please queue up those questions, get them in now and along the webinar. And Hugo will be presenting StormStore projects that have been completed in the last year that are currently that currently have credits available for sale or use. And briefly, I want to welcome our featured speakers who will be presenting along the way. First, Ellen Delawala from RES, and second, Kristen Incheck from Greenprint Partners. I'll introduce each in more detail a little later on. Thank you for joining. And one more reminder before we really jump in, and it bears repeating, use that Q&A function here in Zoom. I think you probably all know how to use it by now. I haven't seen any questions yet, but I hope to see them soon. We're going to try to get to all those questions today, and any that aren't covered, we'll be sure to either include on the website or in the follow-up email. So thank you for joining, and now let's jump in. Just bringing up our website, and you all should be able to access this by going to www.stormstore.org. That link will be in the chat if you're not already there. So we first launched StormStore.org in February of this year. After using the site in the wild and hearing feedback from our stakeholders, we decided to make improvements. Our intent with these updates are to streamline your participation by giving you access to the information you need to make informed decisions about your project, to answer questions, whether you engage with our team or not. We hope you'll engage with the website. And it is organized into 6 different parts for the purposes of this webinar. Each is intended to navigate a key challenge we've heard from our stakeholders, stakeholders like you over the first 2 years of this pilot program. And so we've added features like a project lookup map, which will demonstrate answers to frequently asked questions about the program participation, the permit process, and maybe most importantly, a registry of all currently available credits within the pilot market. Now, there's no right order to how you go through the website, but today I'm going to take you through a journey designed to really get you familiar with the program if you are not. So we're going to start on the first page of StormStore.org. Again, this is kind of an open house format, so ask your questions along the way. To familiarize you with navigation, it's like most every other website. There's a header at the top to help you navigate to different pages. If you're on a mobile device, click the icon in the top right with 3 horizontal bars in the top to help you get to that navigation menu. Now that we're oriented, let me tell you what's here. This first page, we're trying to drive folks to kind of 1 of 2 actions. The first, to help you, the button on the left, finding your solution, will take you to the How It Works page, where you can access later the registry and featured projects. And this will take you down the path of kind of self-learning. You want to learn more about StormStore. Well, here's the first step. Or you could click to find the How It Works, to find your solution button, which will take you to a contact form where you can connect directly with our team, and encourage you to give it a try. We'll get that email in our inbox here shortly. Now, I'll review both of these options later in the webinar. The time being, let's scroll down the page. If you're familiarizing yourself with the program, I want to draw your attention first to some of the reasons we think that StormStore will benefit 1 in 5 developers or landowners in Cook County. And this is based off our analysis of over 10 years of actual permit data from the Watershed Management Ordinance. We anticipate developers in StormStore eligible watersheds, which there are 2, may anticipate an average savings of over $770,000 per project when using credits to meet your stormwater regulations. Now, that could account to over $12 million over the course of all watersheds in savings per year should this pilot program be expanded to users in Cook County. Also, it frees up land. An average site might expect to free 27,000 square feet for development over half an acre, a typical project size. And landowners may expect over $100,000 per sale of what we call StormStore credits. But what does StormStore do? Well, first, our team is here to kind of help you navigate this new compliance opportunity with the Watershed Management Ordinance. We provide pro bono consultation. Second, our team can work with you to navigate the program. That may be if you're a developer working with your engineering or your planning team early in the redevelopment phase, or helping you to identify funding opportunities, such as the Nature Conservancy's Opportunity Fund, of which a project is being funded right now in the Little Calumet watershed. You will notice on every page this feature of the contact form. It's really important to us. It is a direct way to contact our team. You should expect if you use it that we'll get back to you in 24 to 48 hours, likely faster. And there's only 3 forms you have. There's only 3 fields that you have to fill out. That's your email address, your first name, and your last name. It just lets us know who's reaching out. I'll get into a little more detail. You can provide more information that'll help us kind of get ready for reaching back out to you. I'm going to navigate on to the second stage of our journey, because you may still be wondering, what is StormStore? StormStore is a stormwater management solution that's designed for Cook County developers, engineers, and public or private landowners looking for a simple, cost-effective way to meet stormwater management requirements. We also believe it can help mitigate local flood risks in your community. At its core, StormStore takes the guesswork out of stormwater trading while helping you to save time and money. And it is a long-term partnership of MPC and the Nature Conservancy. Our work is powered by over a decade of stakeholder engagement and research on the benefits of stormwater credit trading for developers, engineers, and landowners. And this trading concept originally demonstrated successfully in Washington, D.C. is being replicated across the U.S. recently, Grand Rapids, Michigan launched a similar program. But I will call attention to the one thing that makes StormStore unique, or at least in our opinion. It is the nation's first program that allows credits for both stormwater detention and volume control, referred to as stormwater retention in other markets. And we're excited about testing this new concept in our county. And we've worked in collaboration with MWRD since the release of a 2017 report on the viability of trading in Cook County. And you can find that report linked in our resources page. Over the years, we've also found great support from a wide range of advisors across the region, including our current advisors. You can review this list at your own pace. Of course, as nonprofit organizations, our work is not possible without the philanthropic support of many local and national funders. Now, I want to turn things over to my colleague Hugo, who will show you some of the first projects to take advantage of this program.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'm going to walk you through the third part of this website, the feature projects page. In this section, you can find 4 different projects that has already been built and are generating credits. You can find a brief description of them. You can see what makes them special, and you can see the total credit that they generated. I'm going to focus on 2 projects in this section. The first one is Green Alleys in River Forest, and the second one will be Permeable Pavers in Niles. So the Green Alleys in River Forest, this project is very interesting because in this case, this municipality is planning to transform 85% of their alleys into permeable pavers. And River Forest is doing something that is very interesting for us, which is we call banking credits. So they are kind of like holding all those credits to be used within TIF districts that they have. So they are gonna allow developers that are gonna build in those districts to use those credits so they can boost development. Let's scroll down towards the second project, which is in the village of Niles. So here we have Church Street, and this is a street with permeable pavers. This is just part of a massive stormwater basin that the Niles built to alleviate the risk of flooding on the west side of this municipality. They decided to use permeable pavers to complement this basin on the northern side, and the city upgraded this street from asphalt to pavers. And this is also to provide like a more pedestrian-friendly space for the community, which has historically used this street for festivals. So what is special about this project is that this municipality saw the opportunity of generating credits, and they are expecting to use those credits to pay for that investment, and also as an option to like boost development in the area next to this street, while reducing, of course, the risk of flooding. So I want to focus on 2 main highlights about these 2 projects, and is that how these municipalities were planning development, and they saw that they were within the watershed in the pilot area, and they took advantage of that and developed this project. And also they want to use this investment as an asset, whether to boost development in the area, and at the same time to reduce the risk of flooding in these 2 municipalities. And I'll pass it back to Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. Now we'll hear from the first of our 2 featured practitioners. And if you have questions for either of our speakers, or you want to learn more about their work, we'll be sharing details in the chat. You can use the Q&A function to ask questions directly. And we'll also provide that summary email with their links and relevant information. Our first speaker today is Erin Delawala, a Midwest Client Solutions Manager for RES. At RES, Erin is able to provide her clients with innovative and cost-effective ecological solutions. She brings extensive project management experience in the sustainable management and permitting of natural resources, including wetlands and streams, threatened and endangered species, and sensitive landscapes. Approaches, I think you all may agree, that center nature-based solutions, work that's at the core of work at StormStore. Erin, over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so as Ryan kind of referred to, RES is an ecological restoration company. We do a lot of large-scale construction, all focused on nature-based solutions. So we're but probably best known for restoration and protection of wetlands, endangered species habitat, and other native ecosystems. And we've been very active in the stormwater management and green infrastructure implementation across the US, particularly in urban areas. And some other markets besides Chicago that we've been working in include St. Louis, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and the Chesapeake Bay region, focused both on water quantity and water quality management. So StormStore is a really exciting opportunity for us. We see the value in using private capital to accelerate the adoption of green infrastructure, especially with increasing precipitation trends in our region. We can make that investment in green infrastructure upfront and then recoup our costs through selling credits over time. So kind of bring the benefits to communities early, while making that financial piece kind of baked into a one-time fixed fee for the developer who's purchasing a credit instead of having to manage all of that stormwater on their development site. We also, unique to our business model is that we work closely with landowners who may have an ideal spot for green infrastructure, but wouldn't necessarily reach out to a community or to MWRD and say, I want to put stormwater management on my site. They probably have no idea how to do that. So we kind of proactively look for those opportunities in the watershed and reach out to those landowners to bring green infrastructure to their properties. And then another piece of kind of what's exciting about StormStore is the ability to package the land costs, permitting, design, and implementation, as well as long-term stewardship of these sites in perpetuity, all into that one-time fixed fee for developers. So it really kind of makes, it's a win-win on both sides. It helps the developers with their projects, potentially cost savings, as well as opening up developable acreage for their project, while still managing the stormwater for the watershed in a way that kind of accounts for all of the volume of stormwater that needs to be managed, detained, and treated, and also taking away that long-term maintenance piece. It's built into the upfront cost. So you can go to the next slide. So this is a really cool project that we were able to be a part of. It's a little different than kind of what I mentioned as kind of our core business model, where we like to manage the entire project. Res came to this project as it had already been developed by a couple really great partners. So Center for Neighborhood Technology, the Riverdale Park District, the Nature Conservancy, and Metropolitan Water Reclamation District helped bring this project to fruition. This project is in the Riverdale Park District in Illinois, in Southern Cook County. It's the first project to generate credits in the Little Calumet watershed planning area, and provides over 11,000 gallons of retention for some flooding that was happening on the street next door to this park, and water that was kind of collecting here anyway, but now it's being treated and infiltrating into the ground. So it's really great because it's in this existing park space. It's near this playground, and part of one of the innovative approaches that the design team did was taking some of the fill that was excavated to create this rain garden and turning those into mounds that are play spaces for kids who are using the park already. So a really great kind of intersection of nature-based solutions design and a resource for the community. Res came into the project in this spring. We bid on the construction of this project and were selected as the winning bidder. And we actually constructed the project in the fall and had a ribbon cutting ceremony just a few months, I guess about a month ago. So great to see this project kind of in the ground and already generating credits for the StormStore platform. So really exciting to see this pan out and have those credits available for purchase for developers. And I think, one thing to note about our projects going forward is that we're looking for other municipalities and landowners that might be interested in working with us to develop StormStore projects. And, the thought there is that we can collaborate, potentially even Res contributing some or all of the cost, so that in exchange for the ability to sell those credits long term. We're working closely with a landowner and municipality in the Des Plaines watershed planning area right now, and hopefully we'll have move through the development process and permitting to maybe have those credits available in 2023. But always looking for new opportunities to collaborate and bring more green infrastructure to these communities. So Ryan, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. And yes, Peckney Park, a wonderful project. I see a question here in the chat. We're going to get to that live. So I'm going to start screen sharing again, go back to the website, and we're going to move on to the how it works section. Should see that now. This is considered maybe the third part of today's journey, where we're going to talk about what StormStore actually looks like on the ground. So our marketplace is built atop the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District's Watershed Management Ordinance. If you know, you know. It's the process which all big developments have to go through in Cook County outside of the city of Chicago. And we consider our job at StormStore to connect the buyers and the sellers in this marketplace to make it easier for you to take advantage of this opportunity. And now, while the process might differ slightly depending on your projects, where you're located, the size of the transaction, your needs, the core components are still the same. First, we want to determine your project eligibility, or you need to determine your project eligibility. Second, you need to assess the size of the opportunity. Is it worth going through a process like that? We found typically that there is kind of a threshold for projects to really start to recoup some of their investments, and there is a scale of projects where there's maybe the most benefit. And we're happy to work with you on that. And third, you need to permit your project. It uses the existing watershed management permit process to secure and value your credit opportunity. Now, if you're a seller, your project must first be completed before the credit can be used. And if you're a buyer, construction of the credit generating project must be complete. I've said the same thing, but essentially the seller's credit must be completed. The buyer can use it for your permit. Now, finally, you have to complete construction of your project as the buyer and move into the establishment operation and ongoing maintenance. That's true for all projects in the Watershed Management Ordinance, and it's the same in this pilot. Now, you may be saying, that sounds simple. Great, let's go ahead and jump in. And I say, yes, you should jump in. But there are maybe some questions that are confusing or questions that remain. And if you have those questions, as always, you can reach out to our team, use the contact form. You can email us directly at contact@stormstore.org, or you can call our team directly. So we're going to move down into the next kind of demonstration part of this website, loading here. And this is a feature that we have heard needed for those who have projects. And so we've updated this project lookup map to identify your different eligibilities. And it now, if you've visited this site, there are now 3 different kind of visual codes. Areas in blue are eligible for the trading pilot, or the trading pilot. Areas in green are not included in the trading pilot. However, they can be eligible for stormwater trading more broadly if there are site limitations or constraints demonstrated. Again, happy to talk about that in more detail in the Q&A or after this webinar. And the hatched or striped areas to the right, some of you may recognize as the city of Chicago. There is no eligibility, whether for the pilot or stormwater trading in the city of Chicago. It is a separate ordinance that governs this work. Now, the way this map works is you use a project address. So I recommend choosing an address that is recognizable. You can type it into Google, Bing, whatever your map source is. That is what we're going to do here today. So I'm going to run through a demonstration of eligibility. And as you start to type an address, it will refine down the addresses available in Cook County. Unfortunately, you cannot check the eligibility of sites in Atlanta or Los Angeles or Carnesville, Georgia, where I grew up. But try it, we'll see. So 204 Pulaski Road, that's what I'm looking for. Calumet City, that's in the Little Calumet watershed. Our search up or lookup will zoom into the site. You can see that there. It'll tell you 4 pieces of information. So the first, the watershed area, in this case, it's the Little Calumet River watershed planning area. Second, the eligibility of your project. And in this case, yes, it is a StormStore pilot area. It means it's eligible without any limitations or site limitations or restrictions demonstrated. Third, there are credits available. And fourth, the actual volume of credits available in the Little Calumet River watershed right now is 0.036 acre feet. That is the Peckney Park project. Thank you, Aaron and team, who helped that come online. And so we're trying to streamline the process of you figuring out, can I participate in this program? What's my watershed if I don't already know that? Many folks might not. And are there credits available today to trade? Now, we could use that same address, and if you're from Chicago, you may realize that there is a lot of Pulaski Road that runs through the city of the county of Cook. That same address, 204, this time South Pulaski in the city of Chicago, you can see that the watershed planning area is the city of Chicago, which, if you remember, is not eligible for trading, or the pilot area. No, it is not. Is not eligible for trading in general, and there are no credits available today. If you want to work with us on making that change within the city of Chicago, please reach out to us. We'd love to have more coalition members trying to expand this pilot. Now, you may, if you found that you have a project that's eligible in one of the pilot areas, you may be ready to go ahead and find them, and you can click through this with the credit registry. We'll go into that in more detail. But first, I just wanted to bring us down to the contact page and highlight a couple things. First, to start, you want to reach out to us, email address, first name, last name, and you can tell us who you are. Are you a developer? Are you a consultant? That might be an engineer, a planner, somebody working in the land development, built environment space. Maybe you're municipal staff and you have a project that's planned to happen. Maybe it's an alley, maybe it's a park, maybe it's a school. Help us understand who you are when you're reaching out to us. Possibly you're a private landowner and you want to develop a credit, or you're a community member and you know there's a project coming into your community or could be built in your community that could use this sort of work. And what would you like to talk about? Building a site, buying stormwater credits, bringing StormStore to community, something else. You can even tell us about your project. This information is not shared outside of our organization. So you could say, if you're concerned about kind of letting the cat out of the development bag, you can tell us about your project. It's not going to leave our office. So please, we'd love to hear about that. And then a couple check boxes. You can let us know if you've already done the work to verify your project is eligible using the map above. And if you do click, let me know when your credits become available. We'll be starting to roll out an email in the new year that updates every time there is a new credit added to the registry. So please connect with us. We would love to hear from you. I'm going to move on to the credit registry and click through here. So probably the most frequently asked question we get at StormStore is, are there credits available? The short answer is yes. We've added a new feature to this website to make more transparent what availability of credits is. We're calling it the credit registry. And the credit registry is intended to make the connecting with sellers, buyers connecting with sellers possible without having to reach out to anybody. You can get contact information, figure out availability, if it fits your project size or not. So first, I'm just going to do a little orienting to this page. It's divided into, at the top, you can see the Little Calumet watershed, the Little Calumet River watershed, or the Lower Des Plaines. Currently, you can see right here at the top that there is that one project in the Little Cal, Peckney Park, an infrastructure project. We are not currently listing credit projects from areas designated as limited, so those green areas on the map, but we may add that feature in the future. I should say there are projects on the books, one completed project and projects that are on the books to be permitted. So if you do have questions and you're in one of those areas, please reach out to us. We're happy to talk. You'll also see at the top of every watershed area kind of a roll up of the totals. So Little Cal, one current project, 0.036 acre feet of total volume control, and no detention developed yet in the area. And next, we have each project listed by permit number. You can see in Peckney Park, it's in the Little Calumet River. the credit is available. It's unrestricted use. It is that volume control we've talked about. And this is a project that you can reach out directly to our team to discuss. Jen Jenkins here at the Nature Conservancy would be happy to talk to you about that at any point. If you contact us in the contact form, Jen will get that email and follow up with you. So our goal here is to list out and make transparent all the credits in the currently available. And I should just say, you'll see a couple things here on the screen in the lower Des Plaines. Church Street is listed as available. Reuters subdivision in Franklin Park is listed as conditional. Available means the credit is available for use throughout the watershed where it is located. There's no restriction. To say that Church Street may be available, they're open to use in other areas. The priority for use in the Village of Niles is to use it within the village, but they're open to conversation. Conditional means that the seller has stated an intention to use the credit in a limited area, say within the municipal boundary, such as Franklin Park, or in priority development zones, as is the case in River Forest. And we were very excited about that use, that conditional use, where we see municipalities using these credits almost as an economic incentive to attract new development or redevelopment to the region. And in the future, and if we hear enough, from enough folks, and we'd love to see Res and Greenprint put their projects on here, we're hoping to develop a pending category, which would allow you to connect with projects that are pre-permit and maybe pre-development, early stages of planning, which are not permitted, but may be coming online in the next year or 2 years, so that you can plan ahead for projects as they start to come online. The project contact is listed in each case, and we hope that you'll reach out directly. If you have any questions, we're happy to talk about what we know about these projects. All these projects, we're in contact with the sellers or the permittees, and they've given us permission to both post the contact information and information about their projects. I'm going to scroll up to one of the final parts of the website, and really this is kind of a catch-all page. And if you've been along for the StormStore journey, you'll know that we've been working on it for for just over a decade. And here's the page where you can get information about some of the original feasibility studies. There's a recommendation on market administration. So if you're really interested in kind of the nuts and bolts of how StormStore is intended to work, you can find that information here. Things that we are in the process of developing, things that we're in the process of developing that are not yet on this page will be coming out shortly. We're developing standalone digital and print materials, PDFs that you've heard this from engineers and planners, you can share with your clients to help explain what the opportunity is. So please keep an eye out for that. If you sign up for this, the newsletter, we will make sure that you're aware when those come out. And probably the most important or second most frequently asked question is, do you answer frequently asked questions? And yes, we do. That's what the website in part is designed to do. We've collected kind of the top 10 of those here. We expect to be evolving those as they go, and you can get answers to things about project eligibility, credit pricing, and some of the technical questions regarding permit pricing. We'll continue to update these questions as we hear them, and your questions that come up today will certainly influence that. Now, we'll hear from one of our second featured practitioners, Kristen Inchek, Director of Equitable Planning at Greenprint Partners. Kristen brings over 15 years in planning field, spanning both public and private sectors, including nearly a decade with our regional planning agency, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP. At Greenprint Partners, Kristen is able to deploy her passion for partnering with communities, especially those that have historically been underrepresented, be dynamic and accessible plans and tools that spur on-the-ground action. I hope we can all agree approaches that center community needs are at the core to the work of StormStore. Kristen, welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. My name is Kristen. As Ryan mentioned, I'm a planner with Greenprint Partners, and we are a Chicago-based small women-owned business that specializes in delivering green infrastructure solutions. We have a team of nearly 20 planners and civil engineers on our team, and our mission is to get the most good out of green infrastructure. And advance the slide, please. We do that through a variety of different avenues, but really our focus is on multi-benefit green infrastructure projects. So we look at not only the stormwater capture that these projects have potential for, but also things like placemaking, health benefits, urban heat island mitigation, educational opportunities about environmental issues, beautification, et cetera. And we really look to communities to drive what benefits those projects are bringing. And that leads to the second piece of how we get the most good out of green infrastructure, which is through a focus on equity. So we prioritize the expertise and knowledge of local stakeholders and specialize in projects for low-income communities of color. I think there's going to be a link dropped in the chat for our equity guide for green infrastructure practitioners that we released earlier this year that has a series of equity principles specific to those who are managing green infrastructure programs. And we're really proud of that document and of the structure it's been able to give this issue. For Greenprint partners, the majority of our projects are in low-income communities, and nearly every project that we've done as a company has been in a community of color. And so those are sort of our two cornerstone principles at Greenprint, but we also know that at the end of the day, we're talking about infrastructure, water infrastructure. And so we look to maximize performance on our vegetative facilities. And we also want to make sure that we're efficiently delivering our projects so that we can get the most out of the constrained resources that cities and utilities have these days. Our work historically has primarily been across the nation, but not so much centered in the Midwest. We've worked in San Diego, San Francisco, St. Louis, Philadelphia, and other places around the country. And just recently, over the last year or two, we've started to do some heavy work in Milwaukee and the Chicago region. So I'm really excited to be able to connect the goals of StormStore to the work that Greenprint's able to do. And you could hop to the next slide, please. The project I'm going to talk about today is a project that's currently very early in the works, but is one example of how I think neighborhood-driven green infrastructure could connect to the goals of StormStore and be a really good driver for credits to the market. So this project is a neighborhood-scale green infrastructure project in the Southland in the Little Calumet River watershed. It was actually the subject of a Northwestern student's undergraduate thesis on green stormwater interventions that would be needed to mitigate the 100-year storm event. So he modeled what interventions would be necessary to get there. And the result is shown on the map on the left. It's a series of bioswales in the right-of-way, and then a naturalized detention area on the north part of the site, just south of the highway interchange, that would take in most of the stormwater that would happen during a very large flood event. And so it was determined that these interventions really could help to mitigate some pretty catastrophic flooding in this neighborhood that has historically happened. And this part of the municipality is pretty underinvested and has seen high vacancy in this particular part of town due to flooding issues. So our role in this project is to take this undergraduate thesis and figure out if these interventions are really feasible given our planning and engineering expertise. And so we're currently conducting a feasibility analysis and putting together a funding strategy that would help to implement these projects, take it from concept to implementation. This is predominantly publicly owned land that the interventions would be taking place on. Especially the bioswales. And also I think an investment of this size could be particularly compelling for the StormStore program, potentially also contribute to economic development in the Southland through banking of credits or other means. And so as we start to think about these types of projects moving forward in the Chicago area, we're really excited to connect these ideas to what StormStore can offer to move these projects forward. And I think I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan.
Great. Well, thank you, Kristen. And again, thank you, Aaron. We're excited by both of your participation, both of your work in and around the region. Now we're going to hear from the audience. We've got a couple questions that came in through the chat, and we have quite a number of questions that are queued in the question and answer section, some of which are being answered live. I'm going to start with the ones that came in through the chat. And I think, Jen, these are going to start with, these are going to be directed to you, and they're most likely in regards to credit generating projects. So for a new project, does getting permits that generate credits delay my planning process?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. And that's come up a lot in our conversations with different developers and engineers. And you know, our advice is no. This program really utilizes the existing permitting process that MWRD has laid out. And so, you know, a supply generator project can submit a permit through MWRD as they would, and then a developer, because they still are required to meet a portion of their compliance on site, will still have to go through that permitting process anyway. And so there is no delay in the development process. A lot of the negotiations that happen between buyer and seller can happen as part of that process as well. So, you know, I don't want that to be a deterrent as people are thinking about projects in the future.
And a follow-up, so projects that are generating credits, many in the region get funding from MWRD. Can you generate credits with projects funded by MWRD?
So if MWRD is funding the construction of the stormwater storage, or, you know, the project, that storage, whether it's volume control or detention, cannot be used to generate credits. But if MWRD were to provide some funding for maybe pre-planning or stormwater management, comprehensive plans, and a project is identified through that process and goes on to construction using a different form of, you know, grants or capital funds, that would be eligible to participate in StormStore. So only if MWRD is funding construction can the projects not be a StormStore supply project.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, of course.
And this is a question, I think, probably for Aaron and for Kristen. And Aaron, I'll just ask that you go first. Do you have any advice or suggestions for building credit generating projects in our region, besides reaching out to Greenprint, to Res or Greenprint?
Sorry, I was on mute, Ryan. Could you say that question one more time?
Sure. For communities or private landowners who aren't familiar with both typical development processes or stormwater management development, do you have any advice or suggestions for kind of finding a good project or, you know, getting started?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone on this call is a good resource to set up a conversation, to just talk through what is the need in your community? Are you trying to address flooding in a certain area, or looking for great infrastructure because there's a lack of that in your community? Or are you a developer looking for credits and trying to kind of bring StormStore projects to your watershed because you want to be able to buy those credits? I think probably a first step, if it's too many steps, set up a meeting with each of us to talk through your project, and from there can kind of we could give you advice on kind of what those next steps are relevant to what your needs are and what that project could look like.
And Kristen, do you have anything?
I think that's great advice. The only thing I might add is to look at any plans or studies that have been done by the community to see if there's any insight there on what flooding or other goals could be met through the development of green infrastructure projects, because that can give you a lot of insight into what's going on, as well as maybe give you some funding opportunities if you can link your project to what the broader vision is for green infrastructure in your community.
And I would just add that I think both of these firms who are featured are expert in the finding, funding, and financing of projects, very innovative, both locally and nationally. And I just want to call out to my colleague Jen Jenkins here, who over the last 18 months has developed what we're calling the Opportunity Fund, which is helping to fund green stormwater infrastructure projects, preferably in the Little Calumet region, but in the region. So if you have questions about direct funding, Jen would be a good contact to get started. Looking at first question on the list, Bob Newport, thank you for the question. And Jen, I think I'm going to ask you to get started on this one. Can we reduce flooding in priority areas in addition to the financial aspects or benefits of StormStore? Does flooding help maybe high flood risk areas, or does StormStore benefit these areas?
Yeah, I would say the 2 pilot watersheds that were selected by MWRD are actually 2 of the watersheds in our region that struggle significantly with urban flooding issues. And so, StormStore can be one of the tools in the toolkit we have to help balance out where investments are being made in these watersheds, to make sure that areas that are seeing frequent reoccurring floods actually get prioritized in this process. We are in a pilot period, and we are working with MWRD to make sure that this program is being designed to kind of ensure that these areas are considered first when we're building and selecting trades in the future. So yeah, that's a great question, and I think the goal of StormStore itself is really to make people more aware that we need to address the flooding and priority areas.
Great, thanks, Jen. And I'm going to follow up by a question from Delia. And there's quite a few questions here. I'm going to summarize this, and Delia, please forgive me if I get this wrong. But your question is, living in an EJ, and I think you mean environmental justice area, credits sound like red flags. You have some other questions about trading. Please visit the website, look at our frequently asked questions, reach out to us if that doesn't answer that. Jen, are environmental justice areas good or bad for stormwater credit trading?
Yeah, I think that's a complicated question. And, I think there are opportunities within StormStore where we can help environmental justice communities find additional resources to build these projects and help create new partnership around stormwater infrastructure. One of the goals, we're looking at over the next year is MWRD has done a ton of investment in looking at volumetric studies for each of these watersheds, and that show areas that have sort of a disparity in how much water that they can handle in their systems. And a lot of those are aligning with communities that already are underfunded and under-resourced. And so we'd love to see StormStore paired with some of these analysis that MWRD are doing to ensure that these priority flooded areas in EJ communities are actually seeing the benefits of this program. The way it's designed right now, trades can happen everywhere, but the goal is to help MWRD use this as part of some of their EJ strategies moving forward as we build out this pilot program more. Hopefully that answers the question. If not, please let us know and we can continue to talk.
Yeah. I'm going to skip down to a question from Dudley. Our park district explored stormwater management and found that the ongoing management costs were very high, even for permeable pavement and rain gardens. I think this is a question for all 3 of you. How can you pay for ongoing maintenance, and who might do that?
Well, I can start. The idea of StormStore is through the trade. You hopefully, a credit generator would build in the cost for long-term maintenance into their credit price. So through that trade, you would have funding available to help carry maintenance in the future. Erin, I don't know if, as you guys are developing your projects, if that's the way you are also thinking about it in terms of maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely. We would try to, I think it's actually a requirement for MWRD that you cover the generator that's selling the credits is covering the cost of long-term maintenance in perpetuity, which is a very long time. And so our typical practice for these projects is to set up a non-wasting endowment that will fund that maintenance for the long haul. So anybody can set up a non-wasting endowment to cover costs of maintenance for something like this. You need to kind of develop, decide who's going to hold that endowment and how you're going to kind of meter that money out over time to cover maintenance. But yes, green infrastructure certainly comes with maintenance. And so it's something that needs to be considered upfront and built into that credit price so that you can make sure you're covering your costs or offsetting costs to the extent that, you know, there's some willingness from a community that wants to cover some of that cost upfront.
Yeah, and all that maintenance is being paid for by the credit generator. So once that trade happens, the buyer is no longer responsible for maintaining those projects. So I just want to make sure that's clear from this as well.
And if you have any questions about the maintenance requirements, agreements required for a trade, and we're happy to help any buyers, sellers out there who are working on projects. In fact, over the course of this year, you know, to support trades, we'll be supporting any trades that are going through the contracting negotiation process, both with template materials and with direct support. So please reach out to us if you have questions about any of that. I'm going to answer maybe or turn two questions into one here. Rob K asked, you don't seem to have any private landowner projects listed. Any reason for that? And is there a minimum size for projects in this market? Jen, if you want to get us started.
So there's not a minimum size for any projects. You do have to look at the economies of scale for a program like this, though. So that is one thing I think a lot of developers are considering when they're looking at whether they want to move forward with the project. As far as the private landowner, I would say they're coming. There's a lot of interest now. We are only 2.5 years into this pilot market. So a lot of the projects that are generating credits were municipal projects that were sort of in the works. So they had already been designed in the planning phase. And so it was a little easy for them to leverage this pilot program and kind of take advantage and, generate some credits through voluntary supply that they were already generating. But now we're starting to see the private sector kind of become more interested in helping municipalities build projects, but also private landowner build projects. And those just take a little bit longer in a pilot nascent environment like this. And I don't know if Kristen or Aaron, you guys have any thoughts since you are in that sector. I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think you captured it well, Jen. I think the municipalities maybe already had projects in the queue, so they were able to kind of capitalize on the StormStore program to maybe recoup costs in the future with a project that was already identified. They didn't have to convince the landowner, maybe because it was on public land. With private landowners, you have to work out incentives and figure out what they're trying to get out of their property use. So they're definitely coming. We're working with private landowners on these projects, but just not quite there yet.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, and maybe one more question to close things out. Jen, can a green infrastructure project or project components that are existing or in a development generate StormStore credits? And I think this is what kind of can already developed projects qualify? Give us a little more information there.
Yeah, if it's already been through the permitting process, been constructed, unless it's a special case with MWRD, those projects cannot qualify. We have seen MWRD go back and grandfather, a project in so far, but there were very, very special circumstances for that. So generally, if the project has already been constructed on site, that it won't usually be eligible to participate in StormStore.
Great. Well, thanks, Jen. And I want to give a big thanks to Kristen and Aaron for joining us today and presenting on your projects. We are really excited to have your participation and advice over the years. And I hope folks in the audience resonate with their work and do connect with them offline. Now, you should be receiving a survey right now. We'll leave it up for a couple minutes. Before you leave, I want to remind you two things that you can do to help us out or get involved in the market. And first, you can visit the website, then share stormstore.org with your network. Cook County is a big place, and we need your help in reaching all the municipalities, the developers, the planners who are working in this market. And second, connect with our team. We didn't get to all the questions here. We want to get to your questions here. We'll follow up and we'll send all answers out to folks who are attending here. And finally, we're asking a few questions in this engagement poll. One in particular I want to call out is that we're trying to identify other ideas for how we can support folks who are interested in this market. Things have been suggested, such as hosting a virtual credit fair where you meet some of the sellers and learn more about the projects and even discuss potential trades. We'll have webinars coming up the first 3 months of the year in March in partnership with MWRD, or more detailed webinars on what makes a good project. We might get into the aspects of what made Hackney Park good, or what makes the sort of projects that Greenprint is working on great fits. Or we could get into more technical details of how the permitting process works, what qualifies a good project, how much impervious area do you need to actually make one of these projects viable. So please continue the survey. We will be closing out this webinar at 1 o'clock. But in the meantime, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you again to our presenters and to all the team behind the curtain, and again to our funders. We hope to see you soon. We hope to hear from you soon. And I am going to log off video. Thank you all.